everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. So we've been told, everybody from Maxine Waters, Nancy Pelosi, to that shill Rachel Maddow, to Donna Brazile, to that crook Deborah Wasserman Schultz, even Bernie Sanders, that all of the problems that we've encountered in regards to this last few months, it's Russia's fault. There was nothing wrong with the Democratic Party. They weren't a broken, feckless party. They didn't fail for the past 8 years. They didn't expand income inequality. They didn't pass a health care law that was going up at 50% a few years after in which it was passed. They didn't have 10 million jobs, 10% of, or 95% of which were part-time or contract, essentially jobs that people couldn't live off. No, that wasn't it at all. It was all Russia's fault. It was totally and completely Russia's fault. Hillary Clinton didn't lose because she was a horrible candidate. Hillary Clinton didn't lose because she was monetizing the State Department by taking money from the Clinton Foundation and giving favors through the U.S. government. That's not why she lost. That's not why she lost at all. She lost because a foreign entity, a foreign body, a red menace, stuck his hand into the election process and strangled democracy and put Donald Trump in that office. It's an interesting story. It's a very interesting story. I have another interesting story, though. One that has a little bit more evidence to it as opposed to people just making shit up to make themselves feel better. As opposed to people making stuff up to try to explain why the woman who was supposed to be the most competent and established crook ever to run for that office, how that woman could lose to a reality show host. An influential British think tank and Ukraine military are disputing a report that U.S. cybersecurity firm Crowdstrike has used to buttress its claim of Russian hacking in the presidential election. The Crowdstrike report, released in December, asserted that Russians hacked into Ukraine artillery app, resulting in heavy losses of howitzers in Ukraine's war with Russia-backed separatists. But the International Institute for Strategic Studies told Voya that Crowdstrike erroneously used IISS data as proof of the intrusion. IISS disavowed any connection to Crowdstrike report. Ukraine's Ministry of Defense also has claimed combat losses and hacking never happened. Now, this is important. So Crowdstrike was the company that the DNC got to effectively look over their servers and come back and say, oh yeah, Russia did it. Apparently they were able to figure it out pretty quickly. These elite hackers who could dip in and dip out of systems and machines apparently left some Russian lettering or something in the system that they were able to find and point the finger to Russia. Did you know that the DNC didn't give their servers to the FBI? That's not a little weird? I mean, they're claiming that the intelligence service, that we should believe the intelligence services. They're claiming complete alliance with the intelligence services. Then why aren't you giving the FBI your computers? You don't want them to check over your computers? And the reports, understand logically, if the DNC didn't give them their computers, their servers, to check over, then the only information that the FBI, NSA, and all these other companies could be using is Crowdstrike. Crowdstrike's claims are being found to be erroneous, or at the very least, are being held with some heavy skepticism. Crowdstrike is trying to make this determination that it's Russia by saying, well, there was an earlier attack in the Ukraine where Russia hacked into some kind of application. And in hacking into that application, Russia, I think they said Ukraine suffered like 80% losses of a particular weapon. It was absurd. It was absolutely absurd. Ukraine military said it was such. Other intelligence agencies said it was such. Pursuant to that, Crowdstrike backed away from parts of their story. After Crowdstrike released its Ukraine report, company co-founder Dmitry Erpolok, I'm sorry, I destroyed that man's name, claimed it provided added evidence of Russia's election interference in both hacks. He said the company found malware used by quote-unquote Fancy Bear, a group with ties to Russian intelligence agencies. On Thursday, Crowdstrike walked back key parts of its Ukraine report. The company removed language that said the Ukraine's artillery lost 80% of the Soviet-era D-30 howitzers, which used aiming software that purportedly was hacked. Instead, the revised report cites figures of 15 to 20% losses in combat operations, attributing the figures to IISS. The reason why this is important is because they was using those losses. They were trying to say, well, Russia hacked into this application. And because they hacked into this application, they were able to find Ukrainian weapons. They were finding the location. Because they were able to do this, that data, that program, whatever that particular thing was, they were trying to use signals information and say, well, Russia was able to do it there and destroy 80% of their weapons. And so this looks similar to what happened in the DNC. And so these things are similar. Russia essentially hacked the DNC. Now, this is absolutely absurd on a few levels. We're to believe that these guys are supposed to be super hackers, but for the most part, couldn't cover their tracks. We also know at this point that the CIA had hacking tools where they could absolutely cover their tracks, or at the very least point to somebody else. I'm not making the point that the CIA did it. I'm making the point that there's no way to know who did it. There's no way to know who did it. Ultimately, multiple agencies, whether it was state actors, whether it was private entities, had these tools, they had these capabilities. The idea that they're going to point out and say Russia, and they're not really giving you any evidence for it that you can look at, that you can analyze. Beyond that, the organization, the company that came out and essentially said Russia did it, are now walking back parts of their story. Look, I made the point before. I didn't think there was any there. My feeling was, and it wasn't even just a feeling, if these guys were that good, if these guys were able to break into the systems like Donna Brazil said, and essentially fondle their systems, are you telling me they didn't have the capacity to get out the Russian language and whatever they were doing, leaving like a Word document behind or something with Russian language? This just sounds absurd to me. It sounds, what's more likely? Somebody hacked the DNC and wanted to make it look like Russia, so they left something like just a glaring note of sorts. Russia was here. Or Russia was so incompetent that these uber hackers broke into the system and could not camouflage what they were doing. Even though we ourselves, our CIA, our hackers, our people that we have in our cyber intelligence, has that ability. This just seems weird to me. Do you really believe that Rachel Maddow is going to have a conversation about this particular story? Do you think Rachel Maddow is going to get out and say, well, yeah, the DNC should give the FBI their computers, their servers? Hell will freeze over before that takes place. A large plank in the story that the DNC was pushing, that Crowdstrike was pushing, that the media, for the most part, was pushing, that they unequivocally took, not needing evidence, literally, power one assertion over an innuendo over a conspiracy theory, and ran with it. Part of this was to delegitimize Trump. Part of it was to explain away why Hillary Clinton lost reality show hosts. Because if we're being honest, the embarrassment of having to explain why you lost to reality show hosts is pretty damning. It's a pretty bad indictment, to be honest. Not just of her, but also of the past 8 years of a Democratic administration. This is sad and pathetic. This is sad and pathetic. Do I think they should have an investigation? Yeah, in general. An independent investigation. The problem is, any investigation that takes place is not going to be independent. It's the same point I made about, what's the woman's name? Loretta Lynch. Yes, she should be investigated for what took place with Bill Clinton. Who's going to do that investigation? This is kind of the problem with having a political process that lacks integrity. You can never find an honest actor to actually go into the process and say, okay, we're going to do an honest investigation to discern what took place. Everybody has an axe to grind. And because everybody has an axe to grind, anything that takes place immediately looks like a witch hunt. Any evidence that's found on somebody can easily be, for the most part, discarded by people who are against that point of view. We have problems. We have problems. What this boils down to, though, is a key piece of evidence. The only evidence that they were using to tar Trump with Russia and this kind of red baiting, this nasty red scare rhetoric, this McCarthyism about the Democratic Party, just got scaled back. It just got scaled back. Don't believe the hype. We have a ton of problems in our country with regards to elections. And I make the point before, Russia is not on that list. You can think of 10 items that are problematic with our elections. Everything from the Crowdstrike thing, where you can essentially nix people off the rolls, leaving parties to be in charge of elections that they themselves have a vested interest in the outcome. Being able to shut down polling locations, being able to gerrymander districts. Our elections are not secure. Our elections are not fair and earnest by any stretch of the imagination. And calling Russia as if Russia had something to do with it, or that they played some major role, when the evidence is flimsy at best. And even that flimsy evidence, for the most part, has been undercut. Don't believe the hype. Don't believe the hype. Is it possible that Trump had something to do with Russia? Maybe. Do these guys know, and do they have a smoking gun evidence? No. No, they don't. Does it matter if Trump had something going on with Russia? I'm not talking about colluding with them to hack the election. I'm talking about some kind of business agreement or some kind of business deal. He probably does have a business deal. He's a business guy. But that's a far cry from saying that Donald Trump colluded with Vladimir Putin in order to hack the elections and get information on Hillary Clinton. That's a far cry. And if you're going to make that assertion that a U.S. president, because that is what he is now, did that, you need a little bit more evidence than having some organization that putting out erroneous claims that they have to continuously scale back because they were found to be ridiculous claims. And again, I always have to keep saying this. I don't like Trump, so it's not one of these things of saying it just for the sake of backing Trump up. That's not it. I would like integrity in the process. I don't want the Democratic Party essentially trying to skate on the problems of the party. I want them to confront the issues of that particular party. Blaming Trump or blaming Russia, this red baiting, these red scares, that is literally a way to deflect problems or deflect visibility, to deflect honest inquiry into what is wrong with that party. For the longest time, they're talking about Russia. They're not talking about income inequality. They're not talking about poverty. They're not talking about healthcare. They're not talking about college or school loans or making school affordable. All of these things are off the table. The only thing that the Democratic Party can get up for right now is Russia. That is pathetic. That is sad. And look, if this still goes on by 2020, Donald Trump is going to get another term. Democrats are like 30-some%. Nobody else is believing this. The only people who believe this are them. They're talking to themselves. Wake up. Wake up. And Bernie, stop. Just stop. I made this point before that your affiliation with that party is problematic. And the idea that you're towing the line of the party that slandered you and cheated you, talked bad about you, defrauded millions of your people, not just defrauded millions of your people, for the most part, helped put Trump in that office. Let's be clear on that. And in putting Trump in that office, all the people that are going to be hurt by the policies that he's putting out is in many respects full well related to the Democratic Party, the party that you are now supporting, the party that you are towing their line saying that Donald Trump was colluding with Russia, even though you haven't a shred of evidence to back it up. All this stuff is conspiracy theories. That's all it is. Alright guys, if you enjoy the content, feel free to share, like, or comment. Oh, also Patreon, Facebook, and Twitter. Have a good one, guys.